Welcome to Resiliency Within. I am your host, Elaine Miller-Karras, and today's show is entitled Resiliency 2021, the conference. We have, as a world community, been challenged in ways we have never seen before, with COVID-19 virus raging around the world, climate change emergencies, fires, wars, social unrest, and also the regular windstorms of life that affect us all. Yet, gratitude, happiness, empathy, kindness, and courage can be cultivated when faced with the unspeakable heartache and tragedy of these human experiences. My guest today, Joy Miller, has asked world leaders from a tapestry of backgrounds to bring forth their wisdom on how to get through our current tumultuous times by asking them to reach into their hearts and share how they built well-being, even when faced with unspeakable tragedies. She will focus on personal empowerment and strategies to enhance resiliency as she elaborates upon her Resiliency Forum. Resiliency 2021 brings together participants from, 94 countries. It's expanding across the globe, celebrities, globe influencers, and over 5,000 participants. So, I really want to join. I'm so excited that people are listening, that you will join us and join her on our, I would say, unified global journey as we try to cultivate this well-being during these most difficult times. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dr. Joy Miller, and there's more on the Voice America website that you can read a fuller bio of her. But Dr. Joy Ehrlichman Miller is a leading international voice of building resiliency. She is an internationally known licensed psychotherapist, professional trainer, and author, and is the founder and director of Joy Miller and Associates in Peoria, Illinois. She is a CEO, co-host, and promoter of Resiliency 2021, the largest conference about resiliency on the planet. And you can, and I really want to encourage you to sign up. Is it resiliency2021.com, where you can sign up today, and we're going to give you that webpage again. And so, this is also, I want to say that, I started the show in January, and Joy is my first repeat guest. We had such a lively conversation the first time that we spoke, and I say to her with all humility that I feel she is my sister with another mother, that we think very like-minded, and so it's my joy to have Joy. I know that's such a redundancy there on the show today. So Joy, as we get started today, what is on your mind with what's happening in the world right now?
I think most recently, I've seen a dramatic change. It's almost as though people were really hopeful. I think people thought we were making the turn, and they saw the possibilities. We're going to be able to be with our family, with our friends. We're going to be able to eat out with our friends again and go to movies and do whatever. And that life would come back the way it was. And then I've seen this shift. And I keep thinking about, okay, Joy, you're the one who's doing this resiliency conference. You should know that there's going to be some stumbles even in our coming back. And we may go 2 steps forward and 3 back, but I feel like we're stepping back and we're seeing people being less hopeful, maybe feeling more of the pain right now and saying, is this ever going to stop? Is it ever going to be better? Will we ever have our life back? And I keep thinking there's lessons here. There's lessons where we are right now, but it is hard and it's not what we expected. It's not like we're going to bounce back. We're going to bounce forward, but it's going to be a new forward, something that we've never seen before. And I just think that right now it's very challenging.
I couldn't agree more with you. I was thinking about this today because the last time we spoke, it was in March. And we were very hopeful because people were getting their vaccinations. There were some states starting to open up. I think we were feeling that way maybe in the United States. And I also want to say, because I know we have many listeners that are in other countries, but other countries haven't been as haven't had the vaccine available to them in the way that it's available in the United States. But then we've seen with this Delta variant that so much has shifted. And, what I'm very concerned about and what many people have talked to me about are our children, because the Delta variant doesn't seem to be kind to children like the first derivations of this virus. And so the other part of, I think, my kind of despair about this too, which I share this with you, is the spitefulness. Some of the things I've seen where there's such a strong desire, let's say, not to get vaccinated or not to be masks. And then how do we stop this variant if we don't do public health measures? I guess that's my question. Because I'm glad that we live today and not, during the plague when so many people died in Europe because we didn't know about public health measures then as we do now. And I think the other layer for me as well is the earthquake in Haiti. The Haitians, I was there in 2010 after their earthquake in Port-au-Prince, and the Haitians taught me so much about how to keep going when faced with the most unspeakable traumas. At that time, 10% of the people in Port-au-Prince died in that earthquake. And I'm seeing the numbers rise. I have heard from some of the people that I was able to share an earlier derivation of the community resiliency model with, and know that there's such great suffering there because I know their infrastructure is not terribly strong and they've just had such political upheaval. And then, of course, the images coming from Afghanistan and the wars that have happened in the Mideast. And there's so many. What's happened in Syria. I've had the privilege to go to Turkey and work with Syrian refugees who were coming over the border. And it's just the heartache of what's happening in the world. And, last time we talked together, we talked about your dissertation that you did on the Holocaust. And I think it's really important, in terms of the suffering, is that there are genocides happening right now to the Uyghurs, for example. And there are genocides happening and that have happened to our indigenous tribes all over the world. And sometimes that has not ever been acknowledged, that has been a genocide. So I think that we've been talking about the social disparities and we've been talking about racism. And someone sent me something recently about everyone saying, oh, the racism, everything is getting so bad. And someone sent me a really interesting message. And I thought, this is the truth. It's not that it's getting bad, it's that it's been bad, but it's getting uncovered. And because it's getting uncovered, some of us who may not have realized the full implications of what's happening are really getting hit hard of having this information now known to them. And so as we've been talking about this, and we talked a little bit before the show started, this is really a time that we have to think about. If all these things are true, we can get pretty desperate as individuals, as communities, as nations. But we also know, because we've spoken to them, we know them, that there are ways that people have gotten through the hardest of times. And that's not to avoid or ignore the suffering. And I want to make that very clear to anybody that's listening to us. You and I are not, even though I really like that movie, Pollyanna, we're not that kind of person that doesn't also acknowledge suffering. So with saying that, I really want to just start out with you with knowing this is happening for you too, Joy. How do you get through? What's helping you get through right now?
I've really thought about that for many reasons. One, because I've been studying for the last year how people are finding their way through the pandemic. But for me, it's been allowing myself to embrace not having to be responsible for the world around me, but to be able to use this time to focus on myself and to heal myself and to just be alone with myself. I have never, ever given myself time to just be with myself. And that's been the gift. And so in the last couple days, when I've watched the things, as you said, with Haiti or Afghanistan, it's time for me to quiet myself and to really look at how this is impacting my life, and what I can do to help create a change. And before, it was always about what could I do? It was never about what do I need inside me? What is happening here? How is this about my my growth? I just wasn't focused on that. And so I could never be resilient at times. And now I can, because I'm allowing myself the gift of hearing my own voice.
And so that's been kind of, I guess, maybe the silver lining in the pandemic for you, is this time for self-reflection.
Yes. And, I know from my dissertation that, which was on how did women cope in Auschwitz? And the way that they did cope was through connections with others. And that was the number one thing that the women said, because they had people that reached out to them, or because someone was there and they spoke to them or smiled, or they knew that they were going back to someone, they could make it through almost anything because of love. They could find love in the worst situations. There's still love, there's still caring, and that's what got them through it. And part of that love and that connection is also connection with self. And when I did some statistics this time, we have almost 5,000 people. And this year I asked people, what helped you get through it? And there were 3 or 4 main things that people said. But the thing that really stood out to me was, first, they said that it was connections with family and the people around them. And then second, it was connections with friends and colleagues, and that helped them get through it. But the third thing that people said was the connection to self. And the self connection could be through meditation. It could be through exercise. It could be from doing any kind of self-care, or changing, working at really changing the messages that you're giving yourself. It was the connection to self. And I think that's what I've had the luxury to find that during this time period.
Well, and I think that, having grown up in kind of a Western paradigm perspective, saying, oh, well, the attention to self, to me when I was growing up, would have been, oh, but don't be a selfish person, right? But there's a difference between self-interest and being selfish. And the self-interest has to do with cultivating that well-being, because it's not only then about the self, because when we're more compassionate towards ourselves, what happens to our relationships with others? We tend to be more compassionate to others. And then that's like that pebble in the stream and the ripples going out, that can impact everyone around us. And I also too have heard many people saying that this time alone and, really kind of forced isolation for some has been a time that has been very rich in growth. It's also been a time that has been filled for some with suffering, because they haven't had the luxury of those relationships and connections that we really know from research, and just from even the trends that you're seeing when asking that question, how important that is for cultivating that. So I'm wondering if there are any particular stories that you'd like to share about some of what specifically some of the people have shared with you. That you said those are the 3 kind of buckets or things that people have said. But is there anything that stands out to you as some of the things that they've said?
I think what stands out to me, first of all, is my research 40 years ago showed that connections were the greatest coping skill for women. When I put the statistics together, I thought connections would be important, but I was surprised by the fact that there was no gender difference. Men were saying that relationships got them through it and are getting them through it, and that their family was what was helping them. That is not what happened in research 40 or 50 years ago with the Holocaust. That's not what men typically said. So I was excited to see the change. I was excited to hear people say how much family meant to them, how much, even in the darkest time, if I'm with my family, we can make it. Faith was number 4 on the list. And it was wonderful to hear so many people say that whether it was their faith as God or their spirituality, that they have something that keeps them strong. I think it wasn't when I looked at the survey from almost 4,000 people, everybody was able to put down something.
Mm.
And most of it was about connections, but there was maybe only 1 or 2 people that said, I found nothing.
Mhm.
Everyone was able to say, this has helped me, which I'm not saying we're not suffering. I'm not saying that we're not all struggling with loss and grief and maybe depression and anxiety through this time, but we do have skills. And I think this is the time to really find out more about ourselves and how we can be stronger.
And so, and, when you say that as well, I think that, many times I've seen where people might even use the metaphor, I feel like I'm just in the darkness. And I think what we're saying, we're going to give, maybe there's a flashlight. We're going to turn that flashlight on and we're going to show you that there's, even in the darkness, there is light, and to find that piece of light that might help you get through. Because even asking the question, and this is a question many people, if you've listened to my show before, I ask, what else is true in your life and what has helped you get through hard times? And so for our listeners out there that may be struggling or suffering, even if it's been a long time since you felt that maybe you had a connection to someone that was close to you, or that you had something that helped you get through hard times, it doesn't mean that you can't reach back there and pull that out into the present moment and remember and start thinking about those things, and then to pay attention to what might be happening inside as you call up that memory. Because one of the things that I have learned and that I know to my toes is that we are biologically created to not only remember what has happened to us that may have cultivated our well-being, but to sense it in order to restore greater balance within our bodies and our minds. And so that, I think, Joy, is what we're calling people to do today, as you're sitting there and you may be suffering from all the things that we just talked about. And sometimes we can feel a certain sense of helplessness too, is, how can I help the suffering faces in Haiti or in Afghanistan right now, or in my own neighborhood? And sometimes we can feel powerless. But when we start working, I think, with noticing how to cultivate our well-being, sometimes it's like the cream rises to the top. It's like our brain starts thinking about solutions to not only our own problems, but the problems with our family and our community. And that's what I'm really encouraging everyone to start thinking about. And I think that's why when I think about joining forces with you, and I do feel like we have a joint hand in hand movement that is really exemplified from the amazing Resiliency 2021 and 2020 that I was involved with last year, and involved in this one as well. But maybe we should talk a little bit about the conference, because we really are hoping that by awakening everybody's remembrance of this conference, that you all will sign up. Because does it cost any money to come to this conference,
No,
Joy?
absolutely free. And it's a 4-hour conference that is hopefully a gift to the world.
And one of the interesting things about this is that people have a short period of time. Is it about 5 minutes or less, to really say something about what has sparked their well-being, their resiliency, of what's helped them get through the difficulties in their own life. And so you're going to have 4 hours of this bucket of well-being, which is certainly what everyone shared with me last time, that, boy, they felt so good at the end. So if you're even grappling here going, gosh, Joy, I might, and Elaine, I might be one of those two people that I can't think of anything that's helping me get through. I think by coming to the conference, it might nudge you, and it might even inspire you to start thinking about some of the things that you might be able to create for yourself now that may, in fact, change your life. Many of you may know that both Joy and I have been psychotherapists. So we have been with many people as they've suffered. And I think, to kind of have these two places where we've journeyed, one from Illinois, one from California, and we're kind of now joining forces for this international conference, is that this well-being hasn't it been the core, how we cultivate that well-being in order to get through these difficult times. I don't know if you have any comments you want to say about that.
Well, let me go back a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
What's even more unique about what we're doing is that we have right now 37 celebrities, and every one of the celebrities is donating their time and their talent, and they are speaking to what has helped them. So what's different about our conference is no one is doing a lecture with PowerPoints or talking about clinical issues or doing heady stuff. You have people like Alanis Morissette, who looks you in the eye and talks about the struggle she's had and what she's done and how she found this worked, but this didn't. And she's talking from her heart. And then you have Glenn Close last year talking about her sister and who has schizophrenia and what that has meant for both of them to go through this difficult time and to not be able to have connections with people, and how that's affected them and what they've done and what, little things they could accomplish that has changed and made it somewhat bearable or better. And it was a real conference. These were real people that you've seen, you love, you might admire, but they were talking from the heart. And that's what I hope this will do again this year, is that we have 27 people who are going to be speaking from their heart, and you will find out they're like you, and we're all struggling, and we're all trying to come together to help each other and to find new ways to be resilient, to find some empowerment, to endure, but mostly to thrive.
And I think as you say that too, sometimes we might think that, oh, that celebrity has everything in their life. They have everything that they need. Oh, look at the way they sing. I mean, Alanis Morissette is such an amazing singer, and Glenn Close, of course, is one of the most amazing actresses in the world. And oh, do they suffer? Do they have things that happen to them in their lives? And they also have to pull themselves into cultivating their well-being. And so I think that's where the humility comes in that I've seen in the conference, where people have shared the humbleness of their suffering with us, and also what's helped them. So I'm hoping that those of you that may be struggling or suffering today may come and listen, and maybe hear some of those little pearls of wisdom. Because I think the other thing, you have individuals like one of my favorite human beings on the planet is Sam Habimana, who is coming from Rwanda to also leave a message. And I want to talk more about that when we come back from our break, because I think that one of the things that you've done this year is you've brought in more international speakers. And so if you can maybe share a little bit about that, Joy, when we come back, because we also have an international audience, and we're hoping that all of those who are listening from close and afar will think about going to, I'm going to say it again, resiliency2021.com, and sign up to listen to these presenters. And what we haven't said the date. It's September 9th. Is that correct? September 9th, 2021. And of course, people are all different kinds of time zones. We won't even go there, but it's being broadcast. Is it on Eastern time zone time?
It is. And we can talk about some ways that we've tried to be creative because of the time zones, because we have so many people around the world that are going to be watching this.
Yeah. So yeah, I know. So I can't even wrap my head around that. So we will be back in just a moment, and we will talk more to Dr. Joy Miller about how she's influencing the world, bringing resiliency to our world community. And so we will be back in a moment.
Okay, great job. We're all clear.
Okay. Do you need to take a little bit of a stretch and water there? And then we don't have to take as long a break as we take when we're live.
It's hard. Last year, there was the feeling of this is a miracle and it's coming together. This feels like a different miracle, and it's harder for me to put words to it, because now as we talk about all the countries, I'm seeing more of the big picture of how Sam and Yasmin and Marcelo, and we are actually going to start the show with people's names are going to pop up from all different countries around the world, people that have signed up. And I'm seeing more of the big picture of that the only way we're going to make it through is if we connect.
Well, I want you to say exactly that when we're on the air, because that is really important, that even that learning from year to year, because that is an addition. So, I mean, do you need to get a glass of water or take a stretch, and we can have Matt just put us on again? We don't have to wait the same amount of time when we pre-record, Joyce. So let me know when you're ready to start again. Ready? Okay. So Matt, we're ready.
All right. All right. Segment 2, starting in 4, 3, 2.
This is Elaine Miller-Karish, your host on Resiliency Within. And my guest today is Dr. Joy Miller, and we're going to continue our conversation about the Resiliency 2021 conference that she is producing and bringing to places around the world. So, Joy, we were talking about the international element of all this. And so can you share with us a little bit about what's the shift between 2020 and 2021? You said there's a new perspective that you have since producing the conference.
Last year, I mean, everything was a miracle. Who would imagine that we could put something like this together? And last year there were 27 presenters who donated their time, and people from 69 countries. And to me, everything was just this amazing miracle that we could bring this to everyone and we could do it at no charge. This year, we've almost doubled everything. We have 37 presenters and 7 global influencers, which hopefully we'll have time to talk about. So now we have 40 speakers, 45 speakers almost, and we're in 95 countries as of yesterday. And it's a miracle, but now I see it differently. Now I see what's happening around the globe. I've read every single person's registration. I hear the voices, and we're even going to start off our program with, you'll see people's names in different countries. And more than ever, I see the miracle of what we're creating with this and bringing people together, but I see the power of connections and how everyone is searching for a connection right now. And that's the miracle, that we can come together without political anything, without any externals, and just be with each other and learn from each other and share with each other. And that's what we need, from my perspective, in the world right now, to be resilient and to thrive.
I guess what I want to paraphrase. I guess what I'm hearing you say is what it's important about is not how we're divided or how we're different, but our common humanity. And when you said those four different things that people have said to you, that relationships, family, faith, and that really cultivating that self-awareness, either through prayer, meditation, self-reflection, how people are saying that not just in the United States, but they're saying that throughout the world. So and I guess that's my question too. Are they saying it throughout the world? Because then we're saying, well, we're talking about our common humanity. And if there's a time in the world where we need to cultivate that, I mean, there's been so much war and divisiveness. There's been so much of the social injustices that we've seen around the world, the structural racism, we can go on and on. But then how do we pull out and cultivate that? Because I also want, people to hear that I'm not saying that we don't appreciate and respect differences, but that if we're going to make it together, we have to see the common thread amongst all of society, all of humanity. Am I getting that right? Is that connected to what you're saying? Because I guess that's what's on my mind these days.
Absolutely. I think I think you used the word flashlight. This isn't just a flashlight and I'm seeing like, oh, wow, the world is changing. This is like a giant beam of light saying to me that this is about connectedness, whether it's the pandemic or adversity in general. The way to survive, to thrive is to see the worth in every person, to look at every person and know that they have something that they can share with you that will help you grow and vice versa. And that we have to come together because right now it feels, at least in America, I don't know how many of your listeners are not from the States, but it feels like if we don't do something, we're going to split apart. And then it's really possible.
Yeah.
And that we need to find each other to be resilient. A resiliency can't come in a divided world. That's something else. It's not resiliency, it's a dogma. Yeah. And that will not help us thrive.
And I think when you said, I'm going to highlight the worth of every person, the worth of every person. And I think that's what we're both dedicated to. And certainly, from the history of the Holocaust that happened in Germany, that what happens when you forget about the worth of every person and that you split people amongst because of religion or race or gender identification or sexual orientation. And those tragedies, sadly, are happening right now. And we want to also say it's like we're extending a hand to you. Come with us. We have this conference that's coming up that is one way to start thinking about things in a different way. And it's certainly not the only thing, but it's a beginning thing for many of you that may have not listened to these kinds of presentations before. But I think I think your conference is about cultivating the worth of every person on the globe. And so that kind of brings me to my next question. So can you tell us about the international speakers? I know some of them. Sam Habimana is the one that I mentioned from Rwanda, but you have Yasmin from Jordan, someone else I know. And is Alexander coming from Ukraine as well? So I imagine there's more, but there's some people that I know that I've personally met. So tell us about what you're doing with the international speakers.
Well, this year we decided to really highlight some of the programs that are happening in other countries. So you speak of Sam. So his portion is talking about what he's doing in Rwanda, and Yasmin is talking about what they're doing in Jordan and with her partner Nadia, and how in their business they're working with these families and children and creating a real change. And we also have someone from Canada who is part of a company that is resiliency bound, and that they have all changed their life in so many ways because they've had things that have drawn them to this company, and this company is totally dedicated to having everyone be resilient. And we have someone from Australia who has done this remarkable resiliency program. And in fact, he is going to give everybody who's registered for the conference the opportunity to take a full resiliency test, get a full report, and then you get to be on this app for a month, and it teaches you all about resiliency.
Wow.
And so he's trying to change the world in that way by giving, like what you do, and giving and teaching people. And I think globally, we're seeing all these people just trying to give whatever little bit they have to help everybody connect. And that's what's miraculous to me, is that it's extended past what we had. It's now this conference is about seeing the world and how we all have the same mission.
And so you just mentioned the generosity, and I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that, because I think that people, you're not paying the presenters to come and talk, are you? I mean, you have some pretty big celebrities coming, and you're not charging people to come. So I just think that the generosity of how you've set this up, and that really comes from the heart of you, Joy. And I'm going to bring Brian in on that too, Brian Robinson, who also I know is very involved in all of this. So can you talk a little bit about generosity and what you've seen?
I guess I need to start at the beginning, because I didn't, everybody kept saying, why don't you do a conference like you did 2 or 3 years ago and make it just a conference and charge a fee and do whatever. And I felt like that's not what the world needed. And I wanted to try and just give something to the world. And the first person I called was Erin Brockovich. And I said, Erin, we haven't talked for like 6 years. I'm trying to come up with this idea, and I want to name people that are well known to share what they've been going through and how they've struggled and are making it through the pandemic. And would you be willing to just do a few minutes and give of yourself and just talk? And she said, Joy, of course. Yeah, no big deal. Just tell me the date. Yeah, fine. And it was like everybody I went to last year, it was the same thing of, yes, I'm there. And we just kept finding doors that were open. And the same thing has happened this year. People have actually said, this was so wonderful last year, can I speak again? And can I do more? Can I do this? Can I do that? And I think everybody was willing, and not just willing, eager to give of themselves and their talent with not asking anything in return. And how amazing is that today?
Well, I think that also it's always the question I say, what else is true in the world? And this, what else is true? We see so much sometimes on the media that you think, oh my goodness, the world's just falling apart. And certainly there's suffering going on, but there's so much generosity that we don't necessarily, have that beam of light on. And I think that's what you're doing with Resiliency 2021, that we have to remember that this common humanity, that the worth of every person, and that there is an international perspective about this. And I think about, I had the opportunity to go to Ukraine right before the pandemic. I was invited by Alexander, who's going to be on the show. And, the Ukraine is in a kind of an unfortunate spot on the globe, that many wars have been fought over this land. And consequently, there's been so much suffering. There's been genocide. There's been so much, but yet what I saw in the Ukrainians that I met was this incredible spirit. It's almost like you could just it was palpable, that you could see this springing forth of wanting to make a better present and future for their children, and for their whole population. And is that what you've seen in some of the other individuals that you've spoken with? I'm curious.
Well, I spoke to Alexander, and we even talked about the presentation, and he's exuberant when you see him. I mean, it's infectious because he just sees all the potential, and it's so wonderful. And there's so much excitement about the programs that everyone is putting together because they're seeing that it really helps and it's making change. And we really need to say who's going to be at the conference. I mean, it's yes, Erin Brockovich and Elaine Miller-Karras is going
yes,
to be.
I'm going to be there.
Of
course.
There's Ariana Huffington. There is the Honorable Pete Buttigieg, and I'm excited that Pete has agreed to be on the show. What a wonderful, wonderful gift. We have ex-Congressman Ray LaHood, who helped last year get Dr. Biden to be on our show, and I'm so grateful for his help with that. We have Dr. Ian Smith, Allison Camerata. I was thrilled. This was like on my unbelievable list because I just love her. I think she has such a wonderful heart, and she's very excited about participating in the show. Oh my gosh, there are so many people I can't even remember.
Well, I'm just wondering too, you talked about global influencers. There's 7 global influencers. So what, sometimes people don't know what an influencer is. How is that different from a celebrity or just a regular person? So can you illuminate us a little bit for those of us that may not know, and then tell us who they are?
Well, I think when I think of influencers, I think they're people that change the world, that have the way to be able to help people create a change. I can't just say, Elaine, that it's these 6 or 7 global influencers, because yes. I feel like every one of the people that are talking are influencers. Erin Brockovich is an influencer. She changes our world every day by what she does and how she advocates. Alanis Morissette is an influencer. Allison Camerata. And then Elaine Miller-Karras.
Oh, gosh, thank you. Yes.
So, yes, it's global. As I said, we have people from all over the world, and we have speakers from Israel. We have speakers from Austria. I mean, we have 9 different countries represented this year. And I truthfully had to turn down people because we just didn't have enough time to put everyone on this slate this year. But I feel like everybody is influencing other people. I don't think that celebrities are coming to this webinar as a celebrity. They're coming as a person who wants to help change the world. And there's a big difference in that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's pretty, I guess we all, I guess if we think about how we're cultivating our well-being, that once we cultivate our own well-being, that is also that ripple in the pool, isn't it? So that it really does impact everyone. And yet there are people that are the global influencers that have, I don't know, their Twitter following is astronomical, and that people listen to them when they're speaking. And so they do have a great influence, which I guess I would say you are an influencer too, Joy Miller, in terms of what you're doing with Resiliency 2021. So how will this conference, will it be completely similar to 2020, or will it be dissimilar? What are some things that the lessons learned from the last year that you've imbued in Resiliency 2021?
I think the biggest lesson was the global impact, and that we hadn't prepared for that last year. So I realized this year that if we're doing this conference from 12 to 4 Eastern time, that means in Australia, it's 2 a.m. And we had a lot of people last year from Australia, and we have over 150 people from Australia this year that will be attending, that we needed to be more creative. So this year we're going to put, once someone checks in and they're actually on for part of the time or the whole time, they will be able for 36 hours to go back and it'll be on demand. And
that's great. That's good.
So that, we have a lot of time zone differences, so people will be able to not only go back and watch it again, but maybe watch it again and see different parts that they weren't able to really concentrate on. Maybe they can't take 4 hours off work. The other thing was we decided to make it shorter. Last year, some people were talking for 8 minutes, some were 6, some were 4, but everybody has a very short directive time to talk about whatever, but we have a lot more diversity. So we have this year we have some amazing musical talent. And sometimes I think we forget that people influence not just with their message and their voice, but through other mediums. And last year when Omar Wilson sang, wow, I think it opened up so many people because it was just this amazing opening from the song and listening to his voice.
So who do you have that's going to be sharing their music with us this year?
Well, Omar will be back. We have Alex, oh my gosh. Harris. I had to think about that for a while because there are 2 Harrises, and he will be singing. Matthew Alexander will be singing. Obviously, Elena Morissette is there, but she will not be singing. So this year we have like 3 or 4. Last year we only had one person, 2 people sing. So I think we're going to have more of that and some diversity. People are really going to be trying to reach people in a different way.
Well, I also noticed that last time you had some movement. You had people doing different exercises with us. Will you have that this time as well?
We're going to do more meditations this year.
Okay.
So there will be some actual guided meditations. We're also going to be doing some real interesting work with trying to help people become aware of some things that are happening. We're going to be trying to raise money for first responders. Once again, it's a free event, so we're asking for donations and offerings. We are also going to be doing one unique thing, and that is some of you know Edith Eger. And
I
know that you know Edith Eger, yes, who is one of the most life-changing authors that the world has seen. She's, I think, 94 or 5 and a Holocaust survivor. But
and I think that Oprah said she was the most amazing person she's ever met. I mean, Oprah's met everybody on the planet. So I thought, oh my goodness, she said that about, I had the great joy of having lunch with her more than once. And what an amazing person she is.
Well, the gift this year is that we have been able to create the ability, and Edith will now become a hologram. And this,
how lovely.
The Illinois Holocaust Museum in Chicago is heading out the project. And this October, we will start taping. And Edith is going to become a hologram. And that means for generations to come, they will be able to ask questions of Edith and in real time see her as a hologram to answer their questions. And so we're going to be trying to make people aware of the project and to help raise some money for an introductory kind of overview so that they know a little bit about Edith. And I think, I mean, I get registrations from Thailand, from Australia, from the Netherlands. One came in today, all talking about Edith and how she's changed their
people's lives. And so just so you know, holograms are, many different projects have holograms, and they interview the person and they ask them just a million questions. And so then that hologram is available for in perpetuity forever, where someone can come and ask that question. I mean, the technology is amazing. So that means that the wisdom of Edie will be there forever. And so that, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, people will be able to hear the wisdom of what she learned from her survival, for her thriving, and how she's contributed to the world as a result of the great suffering that she experienced during the Holocaust in I think she was in Austria in one of the camps. Yes.
She was in Hungary and
In
then
Hungary.
was in Auschwitz at 16 and danced in front of Mengele. So she has some amazing stories. We should
Amazing
say
story.
that the hologram is a real live appearing person. You have a real conversation with someone that's sitting in front of you that looks like they're right there. That's the power of a hologram, is that it's human-like. You will be able to ask her anything and you'll feel like you can touch her.
Well, and I just want to say one thing about her as well, is that she dedicated her life to service members, to veterans. And she worked in San Diego for many years. And it was because a service member saved her, pulled her out of a pile and saw that she still had breath. And from then on, her dedication was to help them with their suffering. And she told me once that when people felt that they couldn't reach a veteran, they'd always come and get her because she could reach them and she's just the tiniest of persons too. She's such a ball of fire. So I hope that you all come to, listen to all the presenters. And really, Edie is a treasure of the planet, I would say, and to have her on the presentation and this great gift of the hologram. Oh, I've got tears in my eyes for that one, Joy. So we only have a few minutes left. I just want to remind individuals. So how can they sign up for your conference? September 9th, 2021, and say the website again.
Okay, it's resiliency2021.com. And it's a very simple process. Just go in, it's a Zoom presentation.
And the other thing I would like to really remind all of our listeners to remember what else is true. We have again heard from our lovely guest, Dr. Joy Miller, about how she continues to have that beam of light towards people all around the world who've suffered and have somehow found the strength within to make it through. And that didn't come without tears and all sorts of suffering. And yet they imagine to go forward in a different way, not bouncing back. I think that's important. How can you ever bounce back to be the same way? And maybe you don't want to bounce back to where you were before, but how they've cultivated their well-being to create a different world for themselves and for the people that they love and care about. And I'm going to just remind you to nurture those relationships that you have, no matter how difficult they may be at times, because they're also the ones that help you get through the hardest of times. So Joy, thank you so much. And until next time, this is Elaine Miller-Karras, Resiliency Within, signing off until the next time we meet. Thank you.
All right. Great show. All clear.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As
Yep,
always.
you got it. Have a fantastic week, Elaine.
You too. Please do. Oh, Joy. It's always, really, I know it's such a joy. It sounds so weird. I imagine a million people have said that to you in your life.
I thank you for what you